You know, when you think about World War II, you think of these huge, legendary campaigns. But what if one of the smallest, a real footnote in the history books, was actually the turning point? That's what we're talking about today, the German invasion of Greece in 1941. It looks like a sideshow, but it might just be the campaign with the most massive and, honestly, controversial consequences of the entire war. And to kick things off, let's start with a bombshell, and it's from the man himself, Adolf Hitler. Years after the war, he basically blamed the entire disaster on the Eastern Front, the turning point of the war, on this one campaign in Greece. He literally claimed it cost him everything. So what are we to make of that? Was he just a defeated dictator looking for a scapegoat, trying to shift the blame? Or did this battle for a small Balkan country genuinely change the entire timeline of World War II and, seal the fate of the Third Reich? That's the huge question we're going to dig into. All right, so to really get why Germany even bothered with Greece, we have to rewind a bit and look at its ally, Italy. Because this whole mess, and I mean all of it, doesn't start with some grand German plan. Nope, it starts with Italian pride and a colossal blunder. So picture this. It's late 1940, and Mussolini is getting a little, jealous. Hitler's running around conquering Europe, barely even sending him a postcard. And Al Duce wants his own slice of the glory. He figures, hey, I'll match Germany's big wins by taking Greece. He thought it would be an absolute pushover. Yeah, a pushover? It was not even close. The invasion force was a joke, totally inadequate for the job. And the Greeks, they fought back like lions. Within weeks, they weren't just defending their home turf. They were on the attack, pushing the Italians all the way back into Albania. Then Mussolini tries to save face with this big spring offensive. He even shows up to supervise it himself, and it's a complete disaster. It collapses in just 1 week. So his easy victory turns into this 6-month-long public humiliation. And so this whole Italian mess lands with a thud right on Hitler's desk. All of a sudden, this little sideshow that he wanted absolutely nothing to do with, it's now a full-blown strategic crisis, one he simply can't ignore. Now, this is where things get really critical. You have to understand, at this exact moment, the German war machine is secretly gearing up for its biggest, most audacious gamble yet, Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Everything is focused on that. But now, because of Mussolini's screw-up, this dangerous new front has opened up in the Balkans. It's a massive wrench in the works, threatening the whole plan. Okay, so Hitler is freaking out about two things, two huge fears. First, the British are now in Greece, and they've brought their bombers. And you know what's in range of those bombers? The Romanian oil fields. That's not just some oil. That was pretty much Germany's only major source of fuel. No oil, no Barbarossa. The panzers just stop. Simple as that. The second fear. The Italians are getting beaten so badly, so publicly, that Hitler's worried Mussolini's whole fascist regime could just collapse. And if that happens, Italy is out of the war. Game over for the Axis in the Mediterranean. So Germany has to intervene, right? But there's a problem. Greece's border with Bulgaria is a fortress. It's called the Metaxas Line. It's a tough nut to crack. But then, a total stroke of luck for the Germans. Or maybe bad luck for Yugoslavia. There's a surprise coup, and the pro-German government is overthrown. Well, Hitler is furious. He decides, fine, we'll invade both of them at the same time. And just like that, he has the perfect backdoor to get around Greece's main defenses. And this decision leads directly to Operation Marita. The plan? A classic, overwhelming blitzkrieg to crush both Yugoslavia and Greece at the same time, and just secure the Balkans once and for all. Just take a look at these numbers for a second, because, wow, they really tell the story here. You gotta remember, most of the Greek army is still busy fighting the Italians over in Albania, so the guys facing this German onslaught, a mix of Greek troops and a small force of Brits, Aussies, and New Zealanders, they are outnumbered more than 5-1. And when you look at tanks and planes, it's not even a contest. The odds weren't just bad, they were basically impossible. So how were the Germans gonna do it? Well, it was a classic 1-2 punch strategy. Step 1, use their elite mountain troops to attack the Metaxas Line head-on. This is just a diversion, right? To pin the defenders down. Step 2, and this is the real killer blow. The panzer divisions drive through southern Yugoslavia, completely bypass the fortifications, and then swing down from the north to trap the Greek armies from behind. Absolutely brilliant and absolutely brutal. And so on April 6th, 1941, it all kicks off. Operation Marita is launched. German armies pour across the borders into both Greece and Yugoslavia, while the Luftwaffe hammers them from the sky. The Balkan campaign was officially on. So from the Allied perspective, this campaign instantly becomes a desperate, desperate fight for survival. We're talking about a truly heroic defense, but let's be real, against that kind of overwhelming force, it was pretty much doomed from the start. And you have to give them credit, that defense was ferocious. I mean, make no mistake, on the Metaxas Line, the Greek soldiers held their ground with just unbelievable bravery. There's this one German report from the 5th Mountain Division, and it says they were thrown back at Thermopylae Pass even with strongest air support, and that they took heavy casualties. This was not a walkover. That line was not going to break easily. But in the end, courage just wasn't enough. The German plan, it worked to perfection. While the Greek soldiers were fighting and dying in the forts, the exile Panzer Corps had already smashed through Yugoslavia. By April 9th, they'd captured the key city of Thessaloniki, popping up right behind the Metaxas Line. The entire Greek Second Army was completely cut off. They had no choice but to surrender. So with the main line broken, the rest of the Allied forces are in full retreat, staging these desperate rearguard actions to buy time. And here's where you get this incredible echo of ancient history. A force of Australian and New Zealand troops, the Anzacs, they make a last stand at the Pass of Thermopylae. Yes, that Thermopylae. And they hold off the Germans for a crucial 24 hours, giving the main force a chance to escape. And that incredible stand, it totally paid off. It bought just enough time for this frantic nighttime evacuation. It was called Operation Demon, and you can just imagine Royal Navy ships and Greek boats pulling soldiers off beaches and tiny ports in the dark. It was a massive effort, and they managed to rescue over 50,000 Allied soldiers. But it wasn't a clean getaway, not by a long shot. The German panzers were racing down the peninsula, and they were fast. At the southern port of Kalamata, they cut off another 8,000 Commonwealth troops. They were right there on the docks, waiting for ships that just never made it in time. A real tragedy. And then, on April 27th, the end came. The first German units rolled into Athens. The city was silent, all the shops shuttered. They drove right to the Acropolis, and they raised the Nazi flag over it. The battle for mainland Greece, it was over. So, on the surface, this was a swift, decisive victory for Germany, no doubt about it. But this brings us right back to that huge question we started with. Did this 6-week detour in the Balkans come with a hidden price tag? A price far, far higher than anyone imagined? Did it actually cost Germany the entire war?
And this, folks, is the great historical debate. On one side, you have the yes argument. This is the one Churchill pushed, and even Hitler, as we saw. They say this 6-week campaign directly forced Barbarossa to be postponed from mid-May to late June. And those lost 5 or 6 weeks, they were everything. It meant the German army got caught by General Winter just outside the gates of Moscow. On the other side, you have the no argument. A lot of modern historians lean this way. They say, look, Barbarossa was probably going to be delayed anyway. They had massive logistical problems, and it was a super wet spring that year, which turned all the roads in Eastern Europe into a sea of mud. From this point of view, the Greek campaign was a convenient excuse for a failure that was already baked in.
But no matter what you believe about its strategic impact, it's worth noting there was something different about the fight itself. The famous historian John Keegan pointed out that it was fought like an old-fashioned gentleman's war. There was this strange sense of mutual respect between the sides, a feeling that even in a deadly fight, they were brave opponents, fighting with honor. So that's where we're left. Was Operation Merida a necessary security cleanup, just tying up a loose end on the southern flank before the real war began in the east? Or was it the one fatal distraction, the one mistake that threw off the most important timetable of the entire Second World War? It really makes you think, doesn't it? If Mussolini had just stayed put, if he'd never invaded Greece, what would our world look like today?